Tensions remain high at the village main Reef gold mine in the northwest. Workers took to the streets demanding their jobs back. The mine dismissed close to 2,000 workers last month at Kopanong for taking part in an unprotected sit-in. Today, workers are expected to hold another demonstration. Let me take you to eNCA's Mangoba Mkhunu, who is tracking that particular story. Mangoba, there were protests from the workers at that site yesterday demanding interventions, including the intervention of the Ministry and the Department of Mineral Resources. What's the situation today?
Well, Tulas, a relatively quiet situation here today compared to the scenes that we saw yesterday. In fact, the only people that I can see here around Tulas are only the police as well as some of the mine security who are out here, of course, to beef up security and to ensure that there are no more flare-ups of the protests and the demonstrations that we saw here yesterday afternoon. Of course, we did speak to some of the miners and we understand that they had gathered here earlier today to try again to continue with their demonstration. Of course, they're demanding that the mine pay their salaries, but not only that, they also want their jobs back. So we do understand, Tulas, that earlier on, some of the miners did come here at the mine to hold that demonstration, but there was a clash that ensued between the miners as well as the security of the mine as well as the police. And I understand that some of them rubber bullets were fired and many of them then had to disperse. They were meeting at a ground which is just not far from here a few hours ago, and that's where the unions then entered to disperse these mine workers, to ask them to give the process a chance. We understand, Tulas, that there were talks that were going on between the mine as well as the unions yesterday. Of course, those talks did not augur well to some of these miners who just simply reject some of those proposals that were raised by the mine management, which of course include the issue that those workers who want to return to work will have to, of course, appeal that decision first, and then after that they'll have to sign a final warning. But in terms of that particular engagement that was between the unions and the mine workers, we do understand that the mine has now actually acceded to the fact that these workers can now in fact approach them and appeal the process of their dismissal. But again, that sticking issue, that sticking point to us, is the issue of whether these workers will have to sign those final warnings. They are saying that they don't want that particular proposal or clause in that agreement that was reached with the mine. And they're saying that, in fact, they want the mine to withdraw because they say this is simply a punitive measure from the mine in terms of making them sign these final warnings. We did see the notice that was issued by the mine yesterday afternoon that, of course, lists some of the agreements or some of the things that the mine says it will agree to, and those points are in that mine. But it's specifically, in terms of specifics, it's saying that these miners, it's a take it or leave it situation. They'll have to sign those final warnings if they want to go back to work. But of course, that will be depending on whether they do, the appeals process itself does grant them the opportunity to come back to the mine. So we do understand that most of these mine workers are rejecting this. They are saying that they're not going to accept this. So in terms of the payments, which is one also, all of the bigger issues also to us, we do understand that the mine has now committed to paying those salaries by tomorrow, by the 7th of January. So that's the commitment from the mine insofar as that is concerned. But when it comes to the actual jobs and the issue of some of the other issues, the sticking points on the working conditions, those issues are still to be ironed out.
Yeah, for the avoidance of any confusion, the visuals we've been showing in the last few minutes are from yesterday, and they are file footage that has been captured, not the situation where you are right now at the moment, Mangoba. But in terms of trying to report on this story, Mangoba, how difficult is it to get the side of the story from the mine? Because my understanding is that this is not a company that's known for, putting out its position in public, but not only from the mine, but also talking about such entities as the DMR. You heard the workers yesterday calling for Minister Gwede Mantashe to get more hands-on and roll up his sleeves and get involved in that situation. How difficult is that aspect, other than relying on what the workers are saying and hearing only their side of the story?
Well, Tulas, I must say it's been very difficult to try and get hold of mine management. In fact, we tried several times yesterday to phone the HR manager, we understood was part of the meeting that was taking place. I also made several calls to the CEO of the mine to try and solicit some answers. And I can tell you, Tulas, that it's not been an easy task. In fact, we haven't had any communication from the mine except that particular notice that we saw that was issued to some of the mine workers, informing them, of course, about the decisions that the mine and the proposals that the mine had brought forward. So up until now, Tulas, we haven't had any luck in terms of speaking to the mine and hearing what their side of the story is with regards to this issue. We've also had no joy and certainly not an easy feat when it comes to trying to reach the Department of Mineral Resources. But we'll be pushing, Tulas, to try and get those answers, because these miners say they were unlawfully fired and they believe that they should be given their jobs back.
All right, thank you for that, Mangoba Mkunu, out there at the VMR. And the reason I asked that question is that certainly that mine is not known for being forthcoming with its positions in public. You will see the documentation that they circulate to the workers, and that's just about it. That's all you are left to work with in terms of trying to figure out what the situation is at VMR. And therefore, Minister Gwede Mantashe, Nkwat, yeah, we would love to hear from you about this particular situation before it escalates and becomes an even bigger crisis. So hopefully we'll hear something from the department on this situation.